G'day guys, how's it going? It's Bloodteeth here, bringing you another video of Gemcraft, Frostborn Wrath, and in today's video I would like to talk about something that people have been doing ever since I think the second game, for the most part onwards, Gemcraft Chapter 0, the Lost Chapter. We are going to be talking today about super gemming, or gem weaving as it's known. This is something that a lot of people abused back in, I think, Chapter 0 as well as Gemcraft Labyrinth, because in those particular games you could use these methods to get gems that were somewhat stupidly overpowered for the mana cost, as opposed to doing normal gem combining and upgrading and so forth, where you usually combine two gems of the same grade to level the gem up to the next level. The super gemming can be quite powerful, but I'd like to explore with you in this video whether or not super gemming is actually really still a viable thing. Let's just go in endurance and let's have a look. Let's do some super gemming and gem weaving. I'll demonstrate exactly what it is, and we'll also look at, I suppose, the cost versus the benefits. Super gemming is the idea of combining a gem with a lesser power gem and not upgrading the gem, but rather combining them to make the gem stay the same grade but become more powerful in terms of raw damage, shots per second, and also component power as well for each of the colors. It can be good, but it can also be quite grindy to try and set up and achieve. Now, I don't actually have to start this game. I've got more than enough mana to go ahead and demonstrate. So let's do that, and let's track the progress. Now, super gemming doesn't really make that much sense because of the combining cost. It doesn't make sense to do super gemming for lower grade gems. So let's start working on, say, let's see, when does this become, there we go, grade 8. The cost of combining gems is pretty insignificant at grade 8 gems. So let's go ahead and make a few of these, and let's also make a grade 9 gem. Okay, let's chuck it in a tower and see what happens. Now, for demonstration purposes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay a couple side by side here. Here we have a grade 9 gem, and here we have another grade 9 gem. They're pretty much identical, more or less. Just looking at the damage, okay, the damage is rolled sort of pseudo randomly, but for the most part everything else is the same. Same shots per second, same component power as well, exactly the same component power, which is good. Same range. Now, ordinarily when you go ahead and combine a gem with another gem like this, you would do this and you would upgrade it. And in doing so, what you would do is you would upgrade just about every single aspect of the gem. So component power is now more. If the percentage chance didn't start out at 80%, which I know is the cap for the critical hit, then the percentage chance would go up as well as the multiplier. So that's what you get when you generally just go ahead and upgrade gems by combining two gems of the same grade. Your shots per second is increasing, your range increases, and your damage output increases as well. And the overall effect, more or less, is generally considered to be, a gem that might cost twice as much to make, but the overall benefit is around twice as much effective damage output per second, especially if you're dealing with a gem that doesn't actually do something to increase the output of damage. So if you ignore the component power, you would be looking at the damage isn't double, but it does more shots per second and has a little bit more range, so you could say this is effectively almost double that gem. Grade 10 is almost twice as powerful as grade 9. Now, there is a little bit of a decrease in value, I suppose, for the amount of mana that you put in, because at the end of the day, when you do upgrade a gem from one grade to another, you don't get a gem that is actually, double, the effective power or more. You get a little bit less than double. Something to keep in mind. And even though you get this deficit, it doesn't actually pay to go ahead and place lots and lots of lower grade gems all over the place in different towers and traps and so forth, because even though bang for your buck you get effectively more damage or component power output by going wide, as I call it, by putting lots of gems on the field, it's still preferable to only have a few, not one, but a few gems on the field usually that have, they go high. You keep upgrading them and upgrading their power, because that way you get, it's usually more practical because of the way, say, for example, paths might be shaped on a map. Also, the map might be quite short, all things considered. It might not make sense to put lots and lots of towers on, so generally speaking, you just keep on upgrading 1, 2, or 3 or 4 gems at most, and you usually keep them all clustered in a in an area so that they can take out very big monsters together, or they can all pitch in and help out and take out lots of swarmlings if there's lots of those on the map. It never really pays to have just one gem and to continually upgrade it, but it never pays to go ahead and have lots of gems all along the path either, because there is a net negative effect to that as well, mainly with monster armor. Monster armor can effectively nullify the damage output of lots of smaller gems, but your gems with higher grades will be able to cut through that armor and still do decent amounts of damage. So it's a bit of a best of both worlds thing. Now, that's the common use, and let's just ignore the cost for the purpose of this particular demonstration. Let's ignore the cost of combining gems. Instead, let's just say this cost me 2 grade 9 gems. Now, what I'm going to do is, I've got this one here. I've got a grade 9 gem. 2 grade 8 gems cost a grade 9 gem. So let's see what happens if I combine a grade 8 into a grade 9 gem, and then a grade 8 into a grade 9 gem again. Let's have a look at what happened there. So, we have less shots per second, we have less damage, but we have more range, oddly enough. And also, the component power is similar. It's not the same, but it is similar. And if you have a look at the effective cost of upgrading this gem, it is identical. So, at the end of the day, was this really worth it? That is a very basic, very simple demonstration of gem weaving. When would you do this? Honestly, I don't know. Number one, it's not really worth it, in my opinion. Number two, honestly, I don't really know. I cannot think of a benefit of doing this at the end of the day, unless, of course, you don't have enough mana to, say, upgrade from grade 10 to grade 11. Let's say you're not playing on an account like mine where I've got wizard level of over 200,000. Let's say you're at wizard level 50 or 80 or 100 or something like that, and your resources are quite limited. You're playing, you've got, let's say, for example, keep things simple, you've got one gem right now on the map that's actually, it's your beastly gem. You might have an amplifier next to it as well. You're trying to get it to kill all of the monsters, but you find yourself at a point where you're getting overwhelmed a little bit. So this gem isn't quite keeping up with the pace, but you don't have enough mana to upgrade from, realistically, at that wizard level, you'd be upgrading from grade 5 to grade 6 or something like that. But, so for the sake of argument, you've got this grade 10 gem, you want to upgrade to grade 11, but you don't have the mana, you don't have anywhere near the mana, all you have is enough mana for a grade 9 gem. So, what do? If you really need this gem to perform better than it does, then you can go ahead and combine a lesser grade gem with it. What does this do? It does make it a little bit more powerful. It gives it a little bit more damage. It gives it a little bit more range. It gives it a little bit more shots per second. And the component power does go up. But mind you, it means every time you do actually want to go up a grade with this gem, it's going to cost you more because your upgrade cost has increased now. And that increase is cumulative. So going from grade 10 to 11 will cost 112,000 for this particular example. And then going from 11 to 12, it will cost 224,000. Whereas normally that would cost 150,000. So going ahead and gem weaving from a gem to another gem that is only one grade higher is not really worth it. But that's not the end of the story, okay? There are other things that you can do. Like, for example, let's say you have mana leeching and I don't know why you would have this as a combination, but bleeding. Okay, so let's just upgrade this again to grade 9 and we'll create a few of these. Actually, no, let's not create a few of these. Gem weaving does not necessarily have to happen with gems that are the same grade or there's only one grade of difference between them. I could say, for example, yep, that's right, I've got a grade 8 gem right here. It's a 50-50 split of bleeding and mana leeching. And I decided, no, I still want both components in this gem, but I want one to be more powerful. Now what you could do is, instead of doing this madness, you could do something like this. You could go ahead and create 1, 2, 3. You want more mana leeching, then you can go ahead and do a 1 part, 3 parts gem of the same grade and then mix it in. Just to demonstrate that, actually. Let's go ahead and create that. So I've got a duplicate of this. Okay, these two are your half-halves. This is your 1/3, 1/4, 3/4. Let's go ahead and mix that in. Then, as you will see, the component power for the bleeding went up a lot. But, no, sorry, the bleeding went up only just a little bit. But the increase to mana leeching went up quite a lot. It went from 9,600 to 16,400. And bleeding went from 20.7 to 21.8. So you can sort of do that sort of combining, which I actually do quite a lot of, especially when I'm playing with around wizard level 150, 200, around then. Usually I'll start with a gem that has a little bit of critical hit, a little bit of armor tearing, and a little bit of, shall we say, bleeding. Usually I do something like this because I'm trying to break open wizard stashes, but later on I want, after I've got the wizard stash done, I've got a bit of a mana farm set up, the mana's coming in, it's all going nice, I want this to now start dominating with critical hit, so then I would do something like this. Over time I would keep on combining with pure critical hit, and then all of a sudden you'll see that the critical hit component of this 3-component gem is now the strongest component, and it's showing through, and you can continue to do that. In fact, just a little bit of a heads up, in Gemcraft Chasing Shadows, yeah, the previous one, I just realized there's a random orange flower here. In Gemcraft Chasing Shadows, I found that when I did mixing of yellow with, I think it was mixed in with red and white, just a little bit, for a little bit of critical hit and a little bit of mana pull, mana bound or pull bound, whatever it was. When I created that gem, I created one which was like it was out of 8 grade 1 gems, and I combined them all to make something like this. Whoa, I don't have that much mana. I did something like this. 6, 7, and let's pretend that's pull bound. Then I would do this. And then what I would do is I would go ahead and do something like this. And keep on mixing in and strengthening up only critical hit, so that the component power of my gem, when it went up to, like, you know, grade 32 or 36 or whatever it was that I got it up to, that gem had so little in critical hit and so little in mana pull bound that they barely registered, and it was predominantly a critical hit gem. That's how I wanted it, because I wanted the pull bound component to make it that much more powerful. And I also wanted critical hit because, well, let's be sorry, not critical hit, chain hit. Have I been saying critical hit this whole time? Chain hit was red in the previous game of Gemcraft, and I found, actually, this is finally, the story is coming to a head. I found that once I kept on mixing in gems, you know, critical hit yellow gems of the same grade, and constantly upgrading with gem, eventually, for some reason, the pull bound would actually disappear off the list of components, and it would become a 2-component gem instead of a 3-component gem. And if I kept on doing it again and again, eventually I would even lose the I think it was grade 38 or so. I'd even lose the critical bloody hell chain hit component. So I would take a 3-component gem that started out its life as a grade 4 gem, and keep on mixing in only 1 component for every single grade, all the way up to grade 38 or 39 or something, and I would end up with a pure gem. You tell me how that works. I'm not sure if that was a bug in the game, whether or not it would not be able to track mix-in percentages that was so low, and it just excluded them altogether. I don't know what happened there, but yeah, that's just a little tidbit about the previous game. Anyway, enough about that. Basically what I've got here is, let's see, this is what I would normally do in this particular game. Like I showed you, mix in a half-half with a 3 parts 1 part gem, or even a 7 parts 1 part gem, to really accentuate one particular component power of a gem. But there's nothing stopping you from doing, oh, bloody hell, nothing stopping you from doing this. Now, what's going on here? This is one of those situations where there's not much ventured, hopefully a little bit gained. Let's see what happens when I try and mix in 9 of these pure orange grade 1 gems into a grade 8 gem. Now, you wouldn't think that there would be much of a difference. And actually, to be honest, the most economic way of doing this, I think, the most benefit is done by mixing in the grade 2 gems, because the cost of the gem and the cost of combining gems is kind of similar. So that, I don't know why, but I think that works out a little bit better. Someone can correct me on that. I'm not the biggest expert on gem weaving, but I know the basics. And the basics are to mix in these and have a look at what's happening. That's actually really strange. That's actually not what I was expecting. Basically, well, that was actually worthless. All I did was reduce the component power for both components, and I got no benefit in range, damage, or shots per second. Let me just make another one so I can have them side by side. This is a half-half. So I've completely reduced the component power. I was sure the damage didn't move at all. The range hasn't. The range has decreased, and the shots per second has stayed the same. I have no idea what's going on there. I have no idea why that happened. That could also be a bug. That should not happen. If you mix in gems, no matter what, they should increase a little bit somewhere, somehow. Very strange. So yeah, don't do that. But usually people don't do these sorts of gem weaving with low grade gems. What can I afford? I can afford a grade 18. Okay, so let's do a grade 13, a grade 12 half gem. Okay, this is a little bit more like it. What people do is they usually mix in something like, let's get some grade 6 gems in here. They do some weird stuff like this. What they'll do is they'll mix in 2, and then they'll mix in, they'll gem weave like this, and then they'll basically duplicate that, and then create, actually let's get rid of that 13. What am I doing here? I'm telling you, I'm not an expert at this, but what they would do is they would go ahead and mix that in with another one. So it's kind of like you do a little bit of gem weaving to make all of these that are gem weaved previously, and then you would gem weave in one more level. And then what you would do is you would get your grade 8. I don't know, some rubbish along these lines. And for some reason, for the cost of the mana and also the grade of the gem or some rubbish like that, apparently this method or some variant of this method is supposed to give you gems that have much higher damage than they should have for the amount of mana that you paid for them. The range should be bigger as well as the a more frequent shots per second is the result, and also critically the component power also is supposed to be essentially higher, more than what you would expect for paying for gems of the same value, if you kind of get my meaning. There are tools out there that you can download and use to assist you with this. They're kind of strange. What you do is you take a screenshot of your screen after you've set up like your your walls and your towers and so forth. And then what you can do is you can take a screenshot, and then you would be able to use some presets on gem weaving. You would tell it what components you would want to put in your gem weaved, and then you would go ahead and just use the tool, and it takes over. I think it simulates mouse clicks on these and this and this, and basically it goes ahead and creates all of these really powerful gem weaved or super gemmed gems that are supposed to be, for the mana, a lot more powerful than they should be. Now, I don't know exactly what the combination is, but it's something along the lines of what I showed you, maybe something a little bit more integrated yet again, with more in between levels for each of these gems that you weave in before upgrading. I think they do, the tools that you can get to assist you with this do a lot of weaving before they combine gems to finally upgrade a gem. But yeah, that's basically that's the basic concept of gem weaving. Am I a fan of it? No, not really. Especially without tools to assist you, gem weaving is more of a pain than anything else. Like I said in some previous games, gem weaving was something that you could find to be quite a benefit. Actually, I remember doing this myself. Actually, I remember in Gemcraft Chapter 0, for example, I think the lime colored gem, which was the critical, no, not critical, the how many times am I going to do that? The lime gem, which was the chain hit gem for that particular game, and also the purple gem, which was the armor tearing gem. I believe I used to do some minor super gemming, it was called back then. I did some super gemming with those, and I could get a grade 5 gem to have an insane amount of shots per second. You could get it quite quickly and easily up to the maximum of 270 shots per second, I think it was capped at. And you could also get some decent range out of it as well. And of course, its raw damage output would go insanely off the charts. I don't think there was much in terms of benefit on the component power for Gemcraft Chapter 0 with super gemming, but honestly that didn't really matter. You had a gem that was all of a sudden like a bloody shot, like a machine gun, just mowing down anything and everything. It was one hell of an exploit, let's just say. Is it beneficial here in Gemcraft Frostborn Wrath? I mean, yes, you can do it, but is there the benefit? I'm not convinced. No. Seriously, you could probably find better ways of increasing your ability to, dominate in this game by trying to focus on getting a mana farm, or trying to focus on your talisman and making sure you've got the right fragments in the right spots to get more mana at the start of each wave and also at the start of every field. So that way you don't have to do all of this. I look at gem weaving and super gemming as one of those things where you can do it, and yes, there is a small benefit, but there's a lot of effort that needs to go into making it happen to see any sort of benefit. And as far as I'm concerned, you can save yourself the effort and the mental willpower to do that constantly, in every single game through every single field, and probably put that effort elsewhere to make your experience less grindy and also still be enjoyable. That's my 2 cents worth. I'm not going to show you a demonstration of the tool that people use to assist them to do massive amounts of gem weaving, because honestly I don't really see a benefit to it. And well, like most people, I've been able to play this game and enjoy it and beat it and dominate it while enjoying it without doing gem weaving or super gemming. I've been able to find, shall we say, other strategies of being able to play this game and do convincingly well at it, and get myself to a point where I have, for example, 200 and what is it? How much do I have? 230,000 wizard levels. There are much easier ways to, really play this game well. I don't recommend super gemming, but hey, some people do, and they swear by it, and that's fine. If you do, let me know in the comments below, and let me know what your preferred combinations are for super gemming and upgrading gems and so forth, and tell me whether or not there's any benefit to it. I'd like to actually just manually try it once, just to see whether or not there is a benefit, and if there is something in it, and whether or not I can weave it into my game, because to be honest, I've done just about everything else in this game. Oh, and I also unlocked a few more mods. Let's see. Did I unlock a few more mods? Yeah, I think I did. I thought I did. Huh. That's strange. Whatever. Anyway, super gemming. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, rate, subscribe, all that stuff. And see you guys in the next video.